Welcome back. Does Vodacom really have a 20 billion rand problem on its hands? Certainly there's a bit of negotiating divide between that 47 million agreed to pay the please call me ideas man. Talk about a haggle.
You've the one who's been following this one very closely. I've just been following it on the legal side of things. Anyway, so what's the chat now?
I mean, so the chat is that 47 is a low ball. So the trick is, when I worked at companies, it's quite clear. You sign a contract that says anything you invent while you're here belongs to the company. But at the point in time when he did it, he was told by senior execs, we're going to cut you in. 47 million rand is like biscuit crumbs relative.
Well, their mistake was promising him to cut him in. Then sure, they must cut him in then.
But they must cut him in. And 47 is
a lot cheaper to have done it then than now.
Then now retrospectively.
Okay, so now, but you can't argue about what they should have done. Now, what are they going to do?
They have to pay him 20 billion. I don't like the guy.
They can pay him 20 billion.
I don't like the guy, but give him his money.
I think
that's how capitalism is supposed to work.
But he would settle for 1 or 2, maybe 3 billion.
Well, it's a courts that are going to decide.
I know. Brave man.
Yeah. And he's got some of the lawyers behind him who are also, well.
But there is a small niggle in all of this. At some point it had actually become, was it this case? Oh, am I going wrong? It had become prescribed and the courts agreed to essentially reopen. And maybe I'm getting I think that's the deal. Yes. And the courts actually let him back in. So he did get a back door. So so just 1 billion, not 2 or 3.
So why?
Come on.
Give him his 20 billion.
Deal. Why is
they did. They thought. So what they did is they said that he must have a chat and tea with the CEO, and they must come with a number, and the number was 47, and people would coughed on their tea and said,
"Oh, that's the first time when the court said they must disclose it."
Because the lawyers are on contingency. They don't want to slice.
They're on contingency.
Everyone wants a bigger pie.
Yeah.
But you know, I did see one person comment. They said just giving. First, they said 2 things. Give him his 20 billion, and Vodacom, when are you going to get the share price up? And I thought, those two things are not going to happen at the same time.
So when I started working in asset management, that Vodacom share price was like 120 bucks. Guess what it is now?
Yes. And I'm sorry, if you have to pay 20 billion, ain't going back above 120 rand. Then, of course, in M&Aville, multi-choice, as we said, says no, but the French are surely unlikely to fold as easily as their armies. Sorry, as an Italian who wrote the book on great military victories,
it gets fun because they also crossed 35%. Mandatory offer. Now, multi-choice says they're going to go to the takeover regulation panel. It's in the Companies Act. So they're going to come with a mandatory offer. They're going to say, 105 bucks, because that's the word. They're going to get at least into the high 40s, negative control. They're going to get more than 50. Multi-choice executive team, dust up your CVs.
Yeah, they're going to be thrown out.
But what happens on the regulatory side?
So now it gets fun. Okay. So you can only, by the Electronic Communication Act of 2003 or 5. I've done my homework. Yeah. You can only vote 20%. You can own more, but you can only vote 20%. Oh. Here's a fun fact. So, and there was, in 2022, the ANC proposed increasing that to 49. But let's work with the 20. Let's say they get 81% control of the, they can only vote 20, but there's only another 19%
Isn't Naspers in that kind of situation as well?
Naspers, in terms of ownership
ownership, yeah.
Well, no, they don't. They are media. Well, are they? They're News 24.
No.
So then it gets great.
It's Naspers N or something, isn't it?
But is multi-choice a media company, or is it
it's a streaming company of entertainment. I don't know.
Anyway, they're providing entertainment that day.
But it is media.
I think it's safe to say that the legal firms are going to have a feast off this one as well. And it's going to be
You want to be a lawyer in South Africa at the moment with all these cases taking place. Yeah.
But you know, talking about Naspers, Anne Crotty reminded, this is what institutional memory is all about. She reminded readers in the Financial Mail this week about how multi-choice kind of came, how it all came to pass, and how Canal Plus was interested in them back in the 90s. And the money that they got from the sale of, I suppose, certain assets to what then would become Canal Plus was the money that Koos Becker used to buy Tencent.
So
I remember, I think I brought it up last week, something about Canal Plus. There's a history there with him,
yeah.
I think they moved on that one, but anyway.
So my sense is it's going to happen. Bye-bye multi-choice, dust up CVs. The question is what price? Maybe they sweeten it to 120. Because that's what, I mean, we buried the lead, which is the multi-choice board on Monday said, no, 105 is not enough. Marion Roberts, anybody?
Yeah.
What did Aton offer?
17 Rand.
Was it 17? Now they're a buck.
105. It's trading at?
So it went up 4% on Wednesday.
It's
96.
in the 90s, yeah. Anyway.
Moving on.
If you're wondering why the JSE is empty as Cyril's brain, it's because there's just not very much cash anymore.
I suspect what goes on here is that initially you get a disappointment by foreign investors where they're just not seeing policy materialize, or they're seeing too much deterioration in the fiscal position. Whatever it is, it starts off with some disappointment in economic performance, and as a consequence, they start to become hesitant about investing.
So this was on the news that basically 1 trillion Rand has been pulled from the JSE over, what, a decade?
Yeah.
It's such a, it's sobering, but that you've had net outflows every year for such a long period of time.
I look every day, I look at the volume on the JSE, I look at the value traded, and sadly we're settling now down. On average, before there's the closing auction, we're at 9, 10 billion, and then the closing auction takes it up to 14 or 15, where I think all the ETFs rebalance or something. This is not proper trade.
But
I don't know
too
who
many
it is.
people just trade in the auction these days as well.
Is that like what it is? I don't know what it is, but there's no value. As I said, the old traditional stockbroker that I started with could never make a living on the JSE today. You know, if you're not an asset manager, if you're not managing other people's money and charging an admin fee, there's no way you can survive on the trade on the JSE today.
Take my argument, my argument on the NC piece, put it here, paste.
You're just cutting and pasting.
Yeah, if you fix that issue of profitability in South Africa, you fix a lot of things.
If you make it easy for business to grow and thrive, you will get new
Remove the red tape. You will get your tax collections, you will get the trade. People will always follow momentum anyways. So if you just do the right things to get the momentum going.
Because we were doing about 20 billion back in that OTX boom ahead of the
2007.
Maybe much higher. This is nothing.
So that's 2007. So the time value of money suggests that we should be, what, like 40 billion?
Multiples.
Multiples of
and if it wasn't for good old Naspers and Process buying back their shares, you could take off another 10, 15, 20% of those values.
Well, keeping with the good news, onto the updates. They weren't pretty. Earnings in free fall for the PGM players. Kuro's learner intake has stalled as parents struggle, and Kaap Agri is grinding out the profits. So, I mean, you mentioned it, David.
That's your big one, KAL.
Okay, the Kaap Agri is my Crystal challenge. Well, it has been for the last 3 years. I just can't. I have to give it a chance.
They need to grow more millies, man.
They had a pretty good harvest.
They don't grow mealies. They sell petrol and coffee.
Actually, someone called them the Hiddy store on Twitter, and I couldn't really understand it. And he said, no, it's because they hit it knee. So they never have anything in stock, apparently. So maybe it wasn't such a good stock pick after all.
Kira, writing down 300.
Sad. It's very sad. There's a lesson there because, I always say look at the earnings. Don't always look at headline earnings because they have to write down the schools in terms of, to levels in which they make a profit.
I've been expecting this for years.
Yeah, and that's the sad thing. It's not the headline earnings that we're going to focus on, rather the earnings and what the impairments are. Impairments, they say it's non-cash. Well, it was cash at one stage.
It was cash. It was cash on the way in.
Remember when it was flying and I said, at 48 PE or whatever it was expensive? Yeah. Still expensive.
So I tried to short it twice. Neither time did I. Fortunately, the first time it doubled, so I didn't short it. The second time it collapsed. I could never get script. But then look at Advotech, who've got results out in a couple of weeks. Different story.
Different story because they've got a different model. And they're giving these courses after work, it's not only schools. I think
also
it's a better
schools
company.
Are high-end schools.
Okay.
Big difference.
And then there were Sappi and Arsenal Mittel SA. Once JC Dogs, always JC Dogs. Can we just cut to it and promise never to say nice things about Sappi again? Because David, sometimes you and I get it in our heart. We say nice things about Sappi, and then it just comes back and...
No, it just...
Leave meme stonks in the cesspool.
Yes.
Don't dunk
to the
your hand
Listen
in
to
there.
the youth.
They're not Sappi's not a meme stonk.
It was. It was. In 2020 it was. It was one of the meme stonks.
It was one of the meme stonks.
It did rally.
No, it was Arsenal that was...
The best thing we can say is the debt's coming down.
The one that wasn't a meme stonk was Mondi.
But David, we've been saying that for... I know. It's like...
It's like I just looked at the chart and it's going down, and then I said, okay, we'll look for a nice period. I said, okay, the last 3 years sideways.
But then, quick as an aside, so now Mondi's going to exit our lovely exchange. We'll only have one paper company left.
Are they?
Well, they're doing a tie-up, maybe.
Oh. No, they consolidated their shares. They want to pay a special dividend.
No, that's tricky. I don't know who ever designed that kind of thing. But nobody in our country can divide by 11. You know?
We have to rant about that next week. And finally, a pigeon accused of being a Chinese spy has been cleared by police and released back into the wild, according to Sky News. Detectives in India suspected the pigeon was involved in espionage, given that it had 2 rings tied to its legs featuring words that appeared to be Chinese. However, after 8 months in captivity, it emerged that the creature was an open water racing bird from Taiwan, which had escaped and flown to India, and one can only boggle at the interrogation techniques. Pictures of omelets or something.
This puts a really different spin on Hamba Chuba Bayobamba Pami. Those who know.
And that's where we leave it. Right, David, thanks for joining us. Have a good evening and a great weekend.